Some update coming in from Madras. Hundreds of protesters have gathered outside the Madras High Court demanding the state government to pass a resolution against the NRC in the assembly. This is the latest information that my colleague Purnima is getting us from the very latest. Those are mass protests which are happening right now at the Madras High Court. Let me check if Purnima Murli is with us on the broadcast. Those are the visuals that we are getting right now. Purnima, if you can hear me. At a time like this, especially when we are dealing with coronavirus, we are avoiding any gatherings. How come this gathering was allowed in the first place? Did they have the required permissions?
Well, in fact, I spoke to one of the protesters who has spearheaded the protest today. In fact, the reply I got from one of the protesters was that this was already planned. Permission was given by the state government, and the protester maintained that because the state government said that whatever events have been planned, they can go ahead, and only new events should not happen. So that's something that the protesters maintain. In fact, yesterday, one section of protesters called off protests in the wake of corona outbreak, but this particular protest continues even as the state government said that everyone should avoid mass gatherings. Protesters remain defiant and go ahead with the planned protest. They say that even till the state government passes a resolution against CAA and NRC, they will continue to protest. This despite warnings given.
All right. So, Purnima, if I've understood correctly, they've got the required permission in place.
They are not ready to eat.
They say that the protesters say that they have already got this permission 1 month ago when there was no corona outbreak. But they say that because this was already planned 1 month ago, they still went ahead with the protest, which is why you can see visuals where hundreds of people gathered against the state government, against the state government's decision to not pass a resolution yet. And despite asking them about the state government's warnings to not hold mass gatherings, they say that because they got permission, they continue to remain defiant and refuse to call off the planned protest.
Well, this is absolutely very dangerous to the health of the protesters and everybody who is in that city right now, a health hazard. Clearly, one may have political views, but this is not the time. The time is right now to make sure that coronavirus is contained. We hope that the authorities are listening right now. From Madras, let's now move on to Shaheen Bagh. 48 hours after the Delhi government outlawed all protests or gatherings which have more than 50 people in the numerical strength, including the sit-in at Shaheen Bagh, there seems to be no change in the ground situation there. The talks between the senior cops and the protesters yesterday failed yet again to make headway, despite appeals from all sections of the political spectrum to call off the protest. So those are the details that we're getting you. The protesters continue to gather in large numbers at Shaheen Bagh. The concern of the Delhi government has been that no more than 50 people should gather at one place. That is a directive which is at place. The Epidemic Act has already been invoked. The SDMs are free to act and exercise the law if they want to. Now, Shaheen Bagh has been a sensitive case. The Supreme Court also sent interlocutors to see if there is a middle path that can be chalked out. But at a time like this, when a health hazard we are trying to avert, clearly the situation at Shaheen Bagh is a worrisome one. Zeba is with us on the broadcast. Zeba, taking a perspective from you, no breakthrough achieved so far because the Epidemic Act is enforced right now. The SDMs are empowered to remove people.
Certainly, what the Shaheen Bagh protesters are now playing at is the loophole. They are less than 50 people at any given time, and they're also maintaining social distance. They're sitting at least 2 meters apart from one another. They're also saying that they are sanitizing the place constantly, the protest venue, the protest tent constantly. So they're saying we're taking all precautions from our end to not break the law, to not break any provisions of the Epidemic Act, and taking all precautions for coronavirus, but the protest continues. So this is what has been decided by Shaheen Bagh protesters ever since that order was announced by Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal. That any gathering of more than 50 people will not be allowed in Delhi till the 31st of March, considering coronavirus epidemic.
Zeba, in this conversation, I want to bring in Zakia Soman and Rana Safavi. Both are activists, and perhaps let's take a perspective from them as well. Rana, I want to get your thoughts on this. Coronavirus is a concern, a daunting concern, and rightly so, because the manner in which it has spread across the globe and hundreds and thousands of people have suffered. Do you think at a time like this, Shaheen Bagh protests should be completely called off?
I definitely think that in considering the huge threat that the coronavirus poses for all of us, that they should think of some alternate way of protest. I don't say that they should call off their protest, but they should not assemble there. They can think of some other alternative ways, maybe make that site a museum for to showcase their protest, or think of some other alternative ways. I don't say that they should close their protest, but they should definitely not assemble there because it's a big threat to them considering their age and vulnerability.
Absolutely, absolutely. Zakia Soman is also with us on the broadcast. Zakia, the message that it's a health hazard, the message that you can't assemble in large numbers, it looks like that it hasn't reached the protesters. Nobody has understood, at least at Shaheen Bagh, the gravity of the threat that we are facing right now, because protesters so far have refused to budge from the protest side.
That's true, but then the government has also failed to reach out to them. And this has been a women-led movement, and it has been a very important movement. But I think it is important that every movement has to be strategic. And since the Shaheen Bagh site has so many children who are accompanying the mothers, there are so many nannies and dadis and who are vulnerable, and this crisis is being faced by the whole world. So I think protest is important. They have made a point. It has had a great impact, but they need to devise newer strategies. There are so many other things which, can help continue the protest. Physical sit-in is just one aspect, one kind of an approach. But, on the site, if you see in Shaheen Bagh, there are so many young volunteers. Girls and boys, students, artists. So they can help take forward the protest through social media. It can be through, various campaigns like, postcard
Zakia,
campaigns.
I totally agree with all the suggestions you're making, but the bigger question is, how do you actually get this message across to the Shaheen Bagh protesters? The Supreme Court appointed interlocutors. Well, the time was different then, but each attempt for any sort of mediation so far has failed. Everyone understands the sentiment of the protest. You may have political differences of opinion, but right now it's a health problem. The health of one person will affect the health of the entire community. Do you think that perhaps the community leaders can come forward, talk to the protesters? What is the way forward that I want to understand from you?
See, I would lay the responsibility at the doorstep of two factors. One is the government, and another is the community leaders. So both have a responsibility of reaching out, because these are women who are coming from. Some of them are coming from poor backgrounds, coming from ordinary backgrounds. So the message has to be reached to them. Now, there is a trust deficit also. A trust deficit with the government as well as with the community leaders. So in that, it's an extraordinary kind of a circumstances that we are living in.
True.
So that message has to reach them. And they also have to be very strategic.
Absolutely. And I hope voices like you and Rana go out to these protesters, help them understand that it is for their own health and safety, and for the entire community as well, that they need to be at their homes right now, avoid unnecessary travel and this gathering. Yes, the SDMs are empowered, but it's a matter of wait and watch. We have to see when the authorities act, because the Shaheen Bagh protest, that continues to go on. Well, that and much more will continue on the other side of a very quick break. Stay tuned.